The next morning, Hai rose earlier than usual. With a length of rope tied across his shoulder and a canvas bag hanging from his arm, he walked toward the small town market several kilometers away. The dirt road was quiet except for the chirping of birds. His neighbors, carrying baskets of produce, greeted him with puzzled looks. It was rare for Hai to go to town in the middle of the week. At the hardware stall, he ran his fingers across rows of bolts, metal sheets, and old machine parts. His eyes stopped at a discarded fan motor lying in a corner, its wires frayed, dust coating its blades. He picked it up, tested the weight, and felt the shaft turn slightly when he rotated it. "How much for this?" Hai asked the shopkeeper. The man squinted at him. "That? It's broken. No use anymore." "I can fix it," Hai said firmly. "How much?" The shopkeeper chuckled. "If you really want it, take it for a small price." Hai paid, tucked the motor into his bag, and left with a quiet satisfaction. He also bought a few lengths of PVC pipe, some screws, and a cheap multimeter to measure current. His budget was tight, but he knew that every piece would find its place in the puzzle forming in his head. When he returned home, his son, Nam, ran to greet him. "Father, what did you buy?" Hai knelt down and showed him the motor. "This little thing, Nam, will help us light our house. Maybe even water the vegetables without carrying buckets." Nam's eyes widened. "Really? Can it do that?" "It can," Hai said with a smile, "but only if we build the rest." For days afterward, the yard of their house became a small workshop. Hai hammered, sawed, and assembled parts while Nam fetched tools and held pieces steady. Lan watched from the doorway, shaking her head yet again, but her lips curved with reluctant pride. One afternoon, after hours of labor, Hai mounted the salvaged motor onto a wooden frame. He attached a wheel fashioned from bicycle rims, with blades cut from flattened tin sheets. He carried it down to the stream, anchored it between rocks, and let the current catch the blades. The wheel spun slowly, creaking as water pressed against it. His heart leapt. The shaft turned, and the motor began to hum faintly. He quickly connected the wires to a small bulb he had borrowed from the kitchen lamp. The filament glowed weakly, then stronger. Lan gasped from behind him. "It's working!" Hai's chest swelled with triumph. "Yes, it is. This is just the beginning." But success was fleeting. The light dimmed after a few seconds, and the wheel shuddered under the uneven force of the stream. The wooden frame cracked, spilling the wheel sideways. Hai caught it just before it broke completely. Nam looked crestfallen. It didn't work. Hai crouched down beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "It worked for a moment. That means it can work longer. We just need to make it stronger." That night, as crickets chirped and the family sat around their simple meal, Lan finally spoke. "Hai, I saw your eyes today when the bulb lit up. You looked like a boy who just caught his first fish." Hai chuckled. "Maybe that's how it feels. The stream is powerful. I only need to learn how to harness it." Lan reached over and squeezed his hand. "Then keep going. We believe in you." Encouraged, Hai poured more of himself into the project. He scavenged metal scraps from neighbors, who gave them freely after hearing of his experiment. Some shook their heads, doubting his chances, but others watched with interest. Children followed him to the stream, curious to see what magic he was trying to conjure. Weeks passed. His design evolved. He built a sturdier frame from steel bars, welded carefully under the shade of a tree. He adjusted the blades, carving them with more precision. He studied the flow of the stream, learning which spot carried the strongest current without too much turbulence. Every failure taught him something new. One rainy afternoon, with thunder rolling in the distance, Hai braved the drizzle to test his latest model. This time, the wheel caught the water with steady force, spinning fast and true. The motor whirred, and when he connected the wires, the bulb flared brightly, casting golden light even under the grey sky. Nam clapped his hands and shouted with joy. Lan covered her mouth, tears of pride welling in her eyes. Hi's voice trembled as he whispered, "It's alive." The next step was the pump. Hi knew that lighting a bulb was only half the dream. He needed water for his vegetables, especially during the dry season when every drop counted. He salvaged an old water pump from a neighbor's shed, repaired the worn-out seals, and connected it to his generator. The first test sputtered and failed. The motor lacked the torque to drive the pump directly. Hi sat on the bank, rain soaking his clothes, and for a moment doubt crept in. But then he remembered the faint glow of the bulb, the cheer in his son's voice, the faith in his wife's eyes. He clenched his fists and resolved not to give up. Over the next month, he experimented with gears, belts, and pulleys to increase the torque. He fashioned parts from discarded bicycles, carving wooden pulleys by hand until they fit. His yard became littered with metal shavings and sawdust, but slowly, a system emerged. One bright morning, after countless adjustments, Hi turned the valve and let water surge through the wheel. The generator spun, belts tightened, and the pump coughed before releasing a steady stream of water into a pipe. A jet sprayed out onto the soil of his vegetable plot. Nam jumped and shouted, "It's working, Father! It's watering the garden!" Hi laughed, a deep, joyous sound that echoed across the valley. Lan rushed out, her eyes shining, and wrapped her arms around him. The water sprayed across the rows of green vegetables, glittering in the sunlight like jewels. For the first time, Hi felt not just like a farmer, but like an inventor. Word spread quickly through the village. Neighbors came to see the strange contraption by the stream. Some marveled, others asked questions, and a few even scoffed. But Hi didn't mind. He showed the curious ones how the wheel spun, how the wires connected, how the pump worked. Slowly, admiration grew. A few families asked him to help them build smaller versions for their own homes. At night, under the soft glow of electric light, Hi sat with his family, no longer straining his eyes by kerosene lamp. The hum of the steam-powered generator outside was steady, almost like a lullaby. He leaned back, tired but content, and thought to himself, this is only the beginning. If one man can build this, imagine what a whole village could do. The days that followed were filled with new routines. Each morning, before heading to the fields, Hi checked the generator at the stream. The wheel spun with steady rhythm, the belts hummed, and the pump sent water flowing across the vegetable beds. His rows of greens looked healthier than ever, bright, crisp, and thriving. For the first time, watering them did not mean hours of carrying buckets. It meant turning a valve, watching the water spray, and letting the stream do the work. Lan noticed the change in her husband. His back was still bent from years of labor, but his steps had new energy. In the evenings, instead of collapsing from exhaustion, Hi tinkered with small improvements. He fashioned a filter to keep leaves from clogging the intake. He carved wooden housings to protect the belts from rain. Nam joined him, holding the flashlight, though now it was powered by their very own generator. Neighbors soon began stopping by. The first was old Mr. B.A., who had watched Hi hammering away for weeks and often shook his head at what he thought was wasted effort. One afternoon, he appeared at the edge of the garden, scratching his head as he saw the pump spraying water. "I'll be damned," B.A. muttered. "You actually made it work." Hi grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "The stream never sleeps, Uncle. I just asked it to lend a hand." Word spread. Soon, children came in groups, giggling as they watched the wheel spin. Women carrying baskets paused to marvel at the water jetting into neat furrows. Some men stood with arms crossed, skeptical but intrigued. One evening, a group gathered at Hi's home, curious to see the electric light. When he flicked a switch and the bulb glowed warmly, gasps filled the room. For people used to flickering kerosene lamps, the steady glow was almost magical. "It's like the town market," one woman whispered. Hi's chest filled with quiet pride, but he stayed humble. "It's only a small light. But enough for us to read, cook, and sit together without smoke in our eyes." Not everyone was convinced. A few muttered that the contraption was dangerous, that it might break and flood his fields, or worse, electrocute someone. Hi listened patiently, nodding. He knew fear was natural when faced with something new. But he also knew what he had seen, A light bulb glowing, a pump spraying life into his crops, his son's wonder, his wife's smile. That was enough to keep him moving forward. Hi's ambitions grew. If one wheel could power a light and a pump, what if he built a second? What if he made it stronger, with a better turbine? At night, after the day's work was done, he pored over old magazines and scraps of manuals he found in town. He studied diagrams of water wheels, alternators, and gear ratios. Though his formal schooling had ended early, his curiosity was relentless. One weekend, he rode an old motorbike to a junkyard in the district center. He spent hours digging through rusting engines, pipes, and cables until he found a small alternator from a discarded truck. Heavy, worn, but still solid. He bargained hard, paid with money saved from selling vegetables, and brought it home like a treasure. Lan raised her eyebrows when she saw it. Another piece of junk? Hi laughed. This piece of junk will give us even more power. It took weeks to mount and align it. The alternator demanded stronger torque, so Hi built a larger wheel, carving blades from steel sheets and welding them carefully. He reinforced the frame with concrete footings, mixing the cement by hand. Day after day, he labored by the stream, sometimes with Nam by his side, sometimes alone under the moonlight. When at last the system was ready, he invited his family to watch. Water roared through the intake, the wheel spun, belts tightened, and the alternator whirred. This time, when he connected the wires, not just one bulb lit up, but three, glowing bright and steady. Nam jumped up and down. We can light the whole house. Lan stood in the doorway, eyes glistening. Hi, you've given us a new life. The generator powered a fan, then a small radio. For the first time, the family listened to the evening news without static from dying batteries. Music floated through the wooden house, mingling with the sound of crickets. Hi leaned back, exhausted but filled with joy. His vision was becoming real. But progress never comes without challenge. As the rainy season deepened, the stream swelled with fierce currents. One stormy night, Hi woke to the sound of crashing water. He rushed outside with a lantern, heart pounding, and found the wheel straining under debris carried by the torrent, branches, leaves, even a log. The belts screeched, sparks flew, and the frame groaned. Lan. Nam. Bring the rope, he shouted. Together, in the downpour, they fought to clear the debris. Water soaked their clothes, mud splattered their faces, but they managed to free the wheel before it snapped. Hi reinforced the intake the next day, building a crude screen from bamboo poles to catch debris. He learned that the stream was both friend and foe, generous in power, but unforgiving if not respected. Over time, his system stayed